Well, it's about time for me to take down the Halloween decorations. I just haven't decided if I'm going to put up Christmas decorations right away, or just leave these up and just leave them up for the time until I put up Christmas decorations near the end of November. I don't know. We'll see. Haven't made that decision yet. But so this video is here because I had kind of forgotten that it's supposed to be a 2-week break for One Piece, or 3-week break, whatever, for One Piece. So this is kind of an impromptu video. Some of my other ones are usually a little more planned than this, but this one's slightly more impromptu. But this video idea is kind of coming off of an idea that Tekking 101 made in one of his, it was either in his live stream the other week, or it was in one of his other videos that he did earlier this week, talking about like connections between the younger giants, like Gerd and Hyrule and stuff, and like the older giants. And the joke that he made was, I think it was that like Bragi was Gerd's father because they both fight with an axe. And my answer to that was, well, unless giant gestation periods or pregnancies last for 27 years or longer, that doesn't work. Because Gerd is 73 years old and Dory and Bragi have been fighting on Little Garden for the last 100 years. So that would be quite the thing. God, that would be one hell of a pregnancy. How far along? I'm in my 73rd trimester. I'm like, no. I've been around women that have had difficult pregnancies several times. And it's not fun to watch because you can get very worried about them and the baby. And just like, no. Although I don't remember which one it is, but I know that there's it's either like great white sharks are pregnant for so long, and I know that like whales can be pregnant for so long as well, like over a 1.5 to 2 years range. Same thing with elephants and stuff. Those those bigger animals, their pregnancies can last for a good chunk of time, and I look at that and I'm just like, nope. But so this video is kind of just me kind of looking at possible familial connections, but also just possible connections in general between the younger group of giants that are the new giant warrior pirates that are Hyrudine's crew, and then in regards to Dory and Bragi's crew, and then Ural and Jarl's generation. And of course, Loki and Hyrudine and King Harald are going to be mixed in here. And I'll just start with that. So at the very least, the one familial line that that we know of, canon-wise, that are associated with Elbeth that are giants are King Harald, and then Hyrudine, and then Loki. Now, I already beat part of this dead horse already with a stick, with the whole fact of the way that they refer to Hyrudine and Loki in the official translations are different. As in Hyrudine is just referred to as the son of the king, and Loki is referred to as the official prince, and Loki has always been referred to as Prince Loki as opposed to Hyrudine, who has never been referred to as a prince. Even with him being the elder of the two, and at the least the two of them are half-brothers. And there's, given some of the information we've been given in the last chapter, there's some animosity there. May not have always been, but at least more recently there's been animosity there between the two of them, particularly with the thought at the moment that Loki killed their father, with Loki killing Harald. But I already went into a lot of those possibilities where it's he did kill him, but it was because he was actually a horrible king, or he didn't kill him and Loki was framed, or whatever the case may be. Take your pick. That all, I'm not going to worry about that. That already has been kind of just beaten to death right now, is already beating a dead horse, which I don't really want to do right now because I like horses. Although a dead horse in regards to Halloween is fair enough. By the way, happy Halloween, because this will be going up on Halloween. Um, but some of the other ones, so Tekking made the joke about Bragi because he fights with an axe. He being, he would be, Gerd's father because she also fights with a giant F-off axe. That is not true. Who you are descendant from does not determine what type of a weapon you fight with. Although, to be fair, both Luffy and Garp fight with their fists, and they are related. But by that logic, then Ace should fight with a sword because Roger did. But Shanks fights with a sword because he took after Roger, and Ace despised his father, so there's that. And if you want to go by, your weapon determines who your parent is, you just go back to Wano and, both Kaido and Yamato fight with a Kanabo. So there's that. But then there's also one of the other giants on Hyrudine's crew, Goldberg. He has a giant Kanabo as well. So is he related to Kaido? Which, first of all, Goldberg is older than Kaido because Kaido is 56 or 58. Kaido's in his 50s. Goldberg is 63. So he would be older than Kaido. Also, they look nothing alike. But to be fair, beyond the horns, Yamato and Kaido don't really look alike either, in that regard. We get that a lot. Vivi and Cobra don't look alike either, but Vivi took after her mother in regards to looking like TT. I was going to say none of Lin Lin's children really look like her, but that's not entirely true because there's lots of her children that have, pink hair. And because, off the top of my head, Angel has pink hair. Lola and Chiffon both have pink hair. Anana has pink hair. I know there's others that have... Brownie has pink hair, I think. Katakuri likes the color pink from what we've seen in Black, but that doesn't apply to your genetics. But then again, since we don't know, except for Pound, what any of Lin Lin's husbands looked like, that's thrown out of the window. Plus, just her genetics are just, we don't know, in general. So there's that. Also, you look at some of the family lines in One Piece and yes, sometimes there's similarities in regards to how they fight. And I know that there's a whole theory that Luffy and the Luffy and Garp and Dragon are descendant from Kalgara from Jaya and Skypiea, from the Shandians, that there's supposedly he is their ancestor, which I'm not going to argue with that. Sure, unless we get proof that says otherwise. I can't really argue with that. I know that that's a theory that both Grand Line Review and Randy Troy have done very well, might I add, and they did a very good job with those videos. But so we see a lot of that with stuff, but with family lines in One Piece. But I don't think that's necessarily the case here because Bragi has been gone far too long to be Gerd's father. Uncle, on the other hand, is a possibility. Or grandfather is also a possibility. For either Dory or Bragi to be an uncle or a grandparent to any of the younger giants that are on the crew, to Goldberg or to Gerd, or even a connection to Rhodes, since we don't know anything about Rhodes' parents, or even Stanson. By the way, I was looking up ages on a bunch of these ones just to make sure that I had ages correct for any of the ones that we know the ages of, because we don't know Harald's age of age at death. We don't know. Hyrule is 81. Loki is 63. Dory and Bragi are both 160. Oimo is 153. Kashi is 156. Ray Dean, who was another giant that was part of the Giant Warrior Pirates with Dorian Bragi and Roimo and Kashi and stuff. He's the giant that we see training Hyrule in Big Mom's flashback. We don't know how old he is, and like all the other members of the Giant Warrior Pirates that were ones that were part of the crew prior to when Dorian Bragi were part of the crew when Dorian Bragi were the captains of it 100 years ago, and then the ones that were part of the group that went to Egghead with Dorian Bragi to help retrieve the Straw Hats. We don't know the names of any of them. Oda hasn't given us that. I know that we just had an SBS come out, but I don't think that included the names of any of the other giants yet. Although those might just be something that get asked about later, because like, given how things were, we'll see what happens. I guarantee you someone's probably going to ask about, like, what's the name of the giant that mentioned the green absinthe that they all drank? Seamus. Lucky Charm. I don't know. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. That was bad. I'm sorry. But, like, so we don't know any of their names or ages. They're probably at least all 100 years old, if not far older than that. Dorian Bragi and Roimo and Kashi ages, just simply because of the fact of, like, a lot of them were part of the, Giant Warrior Pirates back then. And then we get Gerd, who is 73. Road and Goldberg are both 63, as has been gone over quite a lot lately. And then you have Mountain Beard and Waterfall Build, Jarl and Jarl. So Jarl is the one that is still alive, and he is 408 years old. He was 345 way back during Big Mom's flashback 63 years ago. And then Jarl is the one who was killed by Big Mom, and he was 344 at his death. So there are possible connections between some of these, and it's not like I could draw specific ones. Like, yeah, Dorian Bragi might possibly be like uncles or grandparents to the younger group. I doubt they would be grandparents. Okay, as much as honor would dictate, if Dorian Bragi knew that they had a child, knew that either of them had a child, particularly a young child, even by giant standards, back on Elbaf, I don't know if they would have stayed during their battle of honor for as long as they did. Although, then again, depending on how that lands, I'm like, I don't know. What would be considered shameful? I'm like, y'all have been fighting for 100 years. You're fine. Elbaf has been appeased. The warrior god of Elbaf has been appeased, so you're fine. You're good. Go back home. But, yeah, Dorian Bragi don't strike me as the kind that's, like, leaving their child if they knew about it. No, it'd be one thing if they didn't know that they had a child. That, like, either of them had a child with, like, just one of the other, one of the female giants on Elbaf, the giantesses, one of the female giants, and, like, they had a child with her, and, like, if they didn't know, like, if she was pregnant and didn't know it before they left and just never communicated it with them because they didn't want to, upset them while they were on their journey or draw them away from their journey, that's a possibility. To be fair, Dorian Bragi were both, like, 60 years old when they started their battle on Little Garden. But by giant standards, they're still, since the giants live so much longer, they don't age quite as quickly. I mean, like, they age up to, like, although, okay. We know during the flashback, during Big Mom's flashback, when we see Hyrule, he's 18 years old during the flashback, but he looks like he's younger than 18 because he looks like he's younger than Luffy, and Luffy is 19, but even back when Luffy was 17, he didn't quite look that young. So I know that giants, quote unquote, since they live longer, maybe they don't grow up as quickly, but that would just seem like they would just stay, like, in their prime of fighting age longer. Like, they would age up to, like, their 20s, their 20-ish range, and then they just kind of stay the same for a while, and then they start to age again, and then it just, like, plateaus, and then they, plateaus, and, they slowly just, they do age, just not as quickly as humans age. or some of the other races in the One Piece world age. Unless you're Dr. Kureha, and then, there you go. So there's, like, thoughts about that, but I know that there was, like, a lot of people saying that, like, oh, maybe back when we weren't sure who was going to be underneath the sun god mask in regards to Road, there was a lot of people like, oh, it's Loki, or they're a giant, and they just treat humans like toys because they're a child. And I'm like, yeah, no, that would be taking a stab at, like, someone who has a childish mind, who is, like, autistic or something like that. And I know several children who have, like, Down syndrome and stuff like that. And that does not make them stupid by any means. Or that they're slow or anything along those lines. It just means that their brain is wired differently. And that's fine. I've been around that a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm somewhere on the spectrum as well for, like, autism and whatever you want to put it there. I'm probably somewhere on that spectrum. Which isn't a bad thing. But so, different family connections are one thing in the Giants. Oimo and Kashi possibly having a connection to Gerd or Road or Goldberg is a possibility because they'd been back on Elbath for quite a while. For the first 50 years of Dorian Broggy's fight before they headed out and then got captured by the world government. Plus, as I said, there are the other Giants that were on Dorian Broggy's crew who were captured by the world government 100 years ago, and then the whole thing happened with Mother Carmel, and they were allowed to go home. Allowed to go home. It was a big farce to get Mother Carmel on the island, on Elbath, so they could get their hands on Giants. But there's, all of this stuff with that where it's like maybe some of them are related to, the younger Giants, or even like Jarl may have been related to, maybe related to some of the younger Giants. We know that Gerd and Goldberg, were talking about Jarl because they're like, oh, we have to report this to Elder Jarl and blah, 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 in regards to what Road was doing in the castle. And so there's a lot of that, but there's also the whole thing of Gerd's probably grown up around Jarl her entire life because she was there during Big Mom's flashback and saw what happened during that fight. She also saw Jarl almost, try to kill one of her friends. To be fair, said friend had just lost it and killed one of their elders and destroyed one of their villages. Because Gerd and Big Mom or Linlin at the time, were friends when they were little kids. And I know that there's stuff where it's like a lot of people want, like, Big Mom to show back up in Elbath because she has this connection to Elbath because of her backstory and everything, and maybe she finds out what actually happens or something like that. Like, there's the giant that had been on what would become Whole Cake Island that saw what happened at Linlin's birthday party. And there's the possibility that, like, they could be there and end up saying something, or, like, have Linlin find out what happened. That's a possibility. I still don't know where I fall on Big Mom and Kaido being dead or not. I really don't know. I mean, like, it doesn't hurt the story if they're not dead, but it doesn't really help the story if they are. I mean, like, one way or the other, it's like it either hurts or it helps, and until we find out, it doesn't really matter until, like, Oda decides to, like, decide. It's like, Big Mom died, and the homies can survive for a while without her. So, like, Zeus and Nami are fine. And, like, some of the other homies, like the big ones on Whole Cake, like, they're fine. But they'll die eventually, but they have, like, a certain set amount of life source in them at the moment. And eventually they'll die, just not yet. So there's that. Although that could leave, like, a moment where there's, like, a big teary goodbye between, like, Nami and Zeus type of a thing. I guess that's a possibility. Although it would be funny if, like, Napoleon and Hera showed up, and, like, Zeus showed, or Napoleon and Prometheus, possibly Hera, showed up and, like, asked Nami, hey, can we stay with you? That would have been hilarious. That would be hilarious, but I don't think that's going to happen. freaking hilarious if it did happen, but it's not going to. Or at least I don't think so. Or if it did, cut back to this and me being right. But there's like some of the things that they're setting up here, and there just may be no connections where it's just, Gerd and Rode and Goldberg and Hyrule grew up on the stories of, and Loki would have as well, and Stanton and stuff, that they all grew up on the stories of, like, Dorian Broggy's crew, from Oimo and Kashi and stuff, and they would have grown up on the stories from Yorl and Jarl as former captains of the giant warrior pirates at the time, whatever, 200 years ago or whatever it was, when they would have been, the captains. And there may also be like an intermediate generation between Jarl and Jarl's group and Dorian Broggy's group, because just via logic, there's a possibility that there's like a group that was in the middle there, who were the, captains of the time. Maybe King Harald at one point had been one of the captains of, the giant warrior pirate, since we don't know exactly. We don't know that much about him at the moment. We know very little about him. We know that he's dead and that was the king. He had a devil fruit, whether or not he had eaten it or whatever is left up for debate. And he has at least 2 sons. We don't know anything else about and he was a giant, but that's implied. But we don't know anything else about King Harald at the moment. But, he could have been one of the leaders of one of the previous incarnations of, the giant warrior pirates. Kind of like on, Amazon Lily, how they had Shocky and Gloriosa, and then it was Tritoma, and then it was Hancock. And they all left for various reasons. The first 3 left because they felt, well, no, just Shocky and Gloriosa left because of the love sickness. Tritoma had it, but she stayed on the island. And then Boa had it, and then Hancock had it for Luffy, and she left with him to Impel Down, which seemed to be enough to cure her. So she was able to then be fine, and she just doesn't deny her feelings for Luffy. Regardless of where I stand on it, that's the case. But unlike with the giants, it's not, unlike with the Amazon Lily, it's not considered a taboo for them to fall in love with someone else. Because, like, Loki wanted to marry Lola. And, as much as that whole situation may have been a little bit, twisted from, third-hand information from Chiffon, depending on, like, what Lola told her and what Chiffon would have heard from Big Mom and the others. There's, always the possibility that, Harald and other, we don't know of any other giants who wanted to marry a human. Loki is the only one that we are aware of. We know that there have been giants who have mated with merfolk, because we know that there's the, what are they called? I don't remember what they're called, but they're like the combination, half giant, half fishman type of things that we've seen a few times. There's one of them on Foxy's crew, and then there's another one of them that's from like the 3D2Y filler on Burndy World's crew. There's like those things there, or those ones there, but we don't see that many of them. Although there's a very good possibility that there is giant blood mixed in with, like, in Shirahoshi's genetics and in Neptune's genetics, just given how freaking big they are, that there's possibly, giant lineage factor mixed in there, considering the fact that it is stated that, like, the way that the Fishman genetics work is kind of like a genetic lottery, where it is, because, like, the 3 princes are not, none of the 3 princes are the same fish, and I think all the way throughout all of the series, I think there's only been like 2 mermaids that were based off of the same type of fish. And I don't remember which 2 those are. I think it was like Shirahoshi and then like one of the other mermaids from like the Mermaid Cafe that the Straw Hats interact with, that, that work for Charlie. But beyond that, I don't think we ever saw any other ones who were based off of the same animal. I mean, like, the same fish specifically. I mean, like, Arlong is based off of sawtooth shark, and then Hody is based off of like a great white, but those are two different types of sharks. And then, like, you get that with like some of the other ones, and then Charlie herself is based off of a shark as well, and then Praline is based off of a hammerhead shark, and such, for like all the different various fish that there are for the merfolk and fishmen to be based off of. And some of them, I don't even know if we know specifically what fish they're based off of. I know when I talked about the princes for this for the Royals and Rulers series, I know that I talked about what genetics or what fish each of them were. Let me see if I still have that information. I should still have that information. One moment. Yeah, it's just Fukaboshi is just a shark fishman, Ryoboshi is an oar fishman, and then Momboshi was an Oppa fishman. But I don't remember exactly what any of those specific fish were off the top of my head, except for what a shark is. In regards to, yes, I know what a shark is, but I'll see if I pop the pictures up in here. But the giants might just be a little bit on a different angle, where it is we don't know exactly, like, Harold was the king, but beyond that we don't know exactly how much of like a giant hierarchy there are for like aristocracy or whatever. For like what levels of things are, because one of the things that you look at is in Big Mom's flashback, as I keep saying, we see Hyrudine, who is a son of the king, illegitimate or not, depending on how you want to put it. He is down training on like what is probably the lowest level of Elbath in regards to the one that's like sea level, in the village where near where the sheep's house is. And he's being trained there by Raiden, or whatever his name is. He's being trained by him, who we don't know anything else about him. He may not have any type of a royal lineage. He may just be a really good warrior, and Hyrudine may have specifically asked him to train him. And Harold was probably fine with that, given the circumstances. So there's that. But there may not be as much of a class system amongst the giants as there is in the Goa Kingdom, where there's very much a class system. And Alabasta didn't necessarily have like a class system. I mean, like, yes, Vivi and her father were royalty, and there's probably other noble families in Alabasta. That's possibly where like Titi came from, was like another noble family in Alabasta or something like that. But it doesn't mean that they're treated necessarily like they're, and then like the commoners, quote unquote, don't necessarily mean that they aren't treated with just as much respect. Then again, that all just depends on like what kingdom you're from, because like in Wano, like Orochi treated anyone who was not willing to suck up to him horribly. And there wasn't necessarily always equality, even back when Sukiyaki was shogun. And you would like to hope that maybe like Oden would do better because he'd seen it from the other side more than Sukiyaki had, and hopefully Momonosuke will do the same thing because he knows to a degree what it's like to be hungry, and he's seen it from the outside. So there's that. Also, you can't tell me, because we know about Buccaneers now because of Kuma and such, Kuma and Clap. You can't tell me that there's not other, like Whitebeard was possibly part Buccaneer. Same thing with like Big Mom. Same thing with Blackbeard and stuff, where it's like they possibly have Buccaneer blood in them as well. For all we know, considering how tall Oden and Momonosuke are, there's the possibility there's a tiny little bit of Giant's blood in there. It's just kind of come down through the line eventually. Because you look at you look at Toki, and Toki was like normal sized. For, normal sized in the One Piece world, whatever normal size is, she was average and average height and everything in the One Piece world. But we have no idea what her parents looked like. She could have giant, lineage in her. Doubt it, but there's a possibility. But then you look at like Big Mom, whose parents were normal looking. They were normal in size. And then Big Mom is just freaking huge. And then as big as she was, and like a lot of her children, like Katakuri is so tall. And, Paris Barrow's tall, Cracker's tall. So many of her children are quite tall. I was going to say, like, Smoothie and Citron and Cinnamon are all tall as well. But they're also long legs. So, long leg tribe. So, there's a difference there. They have another reason for why they're tall. They're just extra tall. I mean, I'm not going to say no that there can't be family relations in regards to the Giants where Gerd ends up saying, oh yeah, Oimo or Kashi or whatever is my uncle, or like, Goldberg maybe saying, yeah, Oimo is my uncle, or Bragi's like my, my great uncle or something like that. So like just having like a connection there or something or other would be fine. But that's basically what I have here. More just me rambling on what this could lead to. We'll see. Also, I just didn't want to put up like a movie review 2 weeks in a row if I could avoid it. I want to kind of spread those out because they take a while to make. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a happy Halloween. I will be handing out candy here to any trick-or-treaters that happen to show up. Not that we get that many of them, but, better to have candy and not have to hand it to anyone and I get to eat it later than have trick-or-treaters and not have candy. So that's what we have. Thank you for watching. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye.